Now, what a day of incredible insights and bold conversations. Before we wrap up, let's dive into our final session. Have you ever wondered how small businesses can not only survive, but thrive in a world dominated by industry giants? What strategies allow them to stay agile, innovative, and true to their core identity? Our next session, How Can Small Businesses Thrive in a Market Dominated by Giants, will explore the power of authenticity, community connections, and strategic thinking to compete and grow sustainably. Get ready for practical tips, inspiring stories, and actionable insights to help smaller ventures make a big impact. Please welcome our panelists, Dr. John Warner, Chief Customer Officer at American Battery Solutions. Welcome. Sam Shah, CEO of The Fraction. Sam's not here. Excuse me. And we have Akshay Markande, Founder and CEO of VersionX Innovations, and Omar Rahmat, CEO of Office Technology Partners LLC. So let's give them a warm round of applause.
John Pohl.
And John Pohl. CEO, 14th Floor Solutions LLC. Welcome.
Thank you so much. All right, well, thank you, everyone, and a special thank you to everyone that's still here. The last session of the last day is always the most difficult, so that's why they saved this great panel for the last to give you some excitement. We're expecting the doors to fly open and 100 people to fill the room here in the next few minutes, but if not, we're going to have a great conversation, and feel free to ask questions as we get into it. So again, I'm John Warner. I'm actually the Chief Industry Relations Officer, moved into a new role here recently with American Battery Solutions. We're a battery pack manufacturer, so we make battery packs for things like electric trucks and electric buses and commercial and fleet vehicles. So this topic is very relevant for me and for what I do, and I think it's going to be relevant for different reasons for all four of us here because we work in different industries. What we want to talk about today is really big companies and small companies. We tend to all be in small companies. A lot of the companies I've heard speaking today are in the small to mid-sized term here. So how do we compete in industries where we've got these giants in there? And I'll give you some examples from my own industry as we go through here. But there's data out there that tells us that about 20% of today's $10 billion valuation companies started as small businesses just in the last 2 decades. So we know that small businesses can and will succeed. The question is, how do they win? What do they do differently to become those big businesses? They don't win on, again, small businesses don't win on scale, and we don't win on resources, but we win on speed, focus, differentiation, intimacy, and the ability to adapt faster and better than the big guys. So with that, we're going to answer the questions, or at least we'll try to. We'll discuss the questions. How do you scale without losing what made you special? And how do you compete without becoming a diluted version of the big guys? With that, let each of our panelists introduce themselves, give a little bit of background, and then we'll delve into some questions. So John, you want to start?
Sure. I'm John Pohl, the founder and chief elevator operator of 14th Floor Solutions. So I'm a CEO. 14th Floor Solutions is a marketing firm. I've had, over the last 19 years, over 50 brilliant clients, very innovative clients, and it's been my pleasure to do my job, which is to help them tell their stories so that their target audiences appreciate and really understand how special their offerings are. And there's nothing I enjoy more than being able to see one of my clients get the outstanding results that their outstanding technology deserves.
Awesome.
Hi. My name is Akshay. I am founder of a company called VersionX. So I kept this name VersionX because I believe that tech in general has to evolve. So hence the name was coined for it. So NX denotes forever improving. As a company, we focus on that. What got me started was that I was very intrigued by why one company succeed and why one company failed in the same line. So I started getting more interested in that. So then I realized it is all about efficiency. So then I turned my interest or passion into a business. So I work with organization to help them get more efficient. So all businesses should or probably need to be more efficient in whatever they are doing. I have probably a self-interest or more passion in that side, so I could pretty much help any business or any company get more efficient in whatever that they do. So very broad statement. But that is what I do, and that is was the starting of VersionX. I have close to about about 7 or 8 Fortune 100 company clients working with me, and there are of course small and mid-sized companies that I work with. So as a business doing well now, so I've been doing this for about 10 years.
Thank you, Akshay. My name is Omar Rahmat. I'm the CEO of Office Technology Partners. We're in the we are an expense reduction business. So I work with mid to large size businesses. I help them reduce their cost of operation related to their operational contracts. I find this very, very rewarding because based on my experience, there's a huge gap between what the customers are spending and what the contractual pricing and terms need to be. So examining those vulnerabilities at my clients and exploring it with them and finding advantages and areas of improvement really makes my job very rewarding. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. So in my business, we've got an interesting industry. We're led by 3 giants, 3 companies in the battery space, literally make up 65% of the market. So there are these giants in there. So one of the questions that I want to start with is, and this is a question that we had to face when we started the company, is what's the biggest single disadvantage or challenge that small businesses face today when working with these markets and trying to face these giants? Let's start with that one. And Omar, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think the single biggest challenges that businesses have is limited financial capability. Mm-hmm. They don't have access to a large capital like the giants do. And, to navigate their way through this, tough climate is very hard for them. So I would say that is the number one biggest challenge for most small businesses. They need capital to get them going.
Yeah, I have maybe a couple of points to add more. So money is one of the part, but I also feel it's the knowledge and the experience. Because a larger company is doing something for 20 years, so of course they would have more knowledge about something which a smaller company has to still get to. And what makes money easier for a larger company is to have right talent. So you could still have certain people, you can buy somebody who's 20 years experience and try to get to that knowledge or experience faster. But then lack of money then also stops you from doing that.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. We saw that in my industry that we found that the companies that tend to be more successful are ones that can pay a little better. They can bring those resources in, and then ultimately when they find strategic partners, one of the things we struggle with in the battery space is it's capital intensive. So you get to a point where the VC funding just can't continue anymore, and you need that big strategic partner or that big capital injection to be able to move. So, John, what do you think?
Well, those are great answers. As a marketing guy, I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle. I think one of the biggest challenges for a small company going after a big company is the fact that they have very little awareness or credibility. Especially if you're in the B2B space, when somebody's buying a product from you, typically it's a pretty big ticket item, and they're taking a risk on you if they've never heard of you before, and they don't have any evidence or you don't have any reputation to hang your hat on. So it doesn't mean you can't overcome that challenge, but it is a challenge that you have to be aware of and make sure that you somehow are able to convince a prospect that despite the fact they've never heard of you before, you're the best solution for their needs.
John, that's a great story. And let me add, so when we started ABS, we literally rented a conference room in a hotel for like the first 3 months. So we were meeting with prospective customers in the lobby of this hotel. So they got there and looking around and said, what is going on? So once we moved into a real facility, things started to change. But those first couple of months, you could definitely see it in customers' eyes. Like, why are we meeting here? So that credibility really was a big challenge when we started. Awesome. So let's flip that question around. And John, why don't you start us with this one? What's the most underutilized advantage small businesses have? You work with a lot of small businesses in your firm, so what do you think?
Well, I think there's a great opportunity that comes from the fact that most companies, including most big companies, do a really bad job at one thing, and that is telling their story. Mm-hmm. There's something called a customer promise, which has three components that every company, no matter how big they are, should have. They should be making to their prospect. Basically, it's to say that your product, number one, is offering something of great value to the prospect, something that they look at it, they listen to it, and they say, wow, I want that. I can't get that from anybody else. Secondly, it should be something that's unique to you, something you can own that they can't get from anybody else. And thirdly, it's got to be something that you can convince them, even though they've never heard of you before, that you can deliver, you can walk the talk. So if you have a customer promise, studies show that it will triple your chances of increasing market share. So you would think that everybody would do this, right? Everybody have a customer promise, but the same study showed that of all the companies that they studied, and it was over 700, only 18% had a customer promise. As they were marketing themselves, only 18% had a customer promise. You can own, yeah. Yeah, that you're the only one making the claim, ideally. And yeah, just the fact that whatever you're hanging your hat on, whatever you're promising is big, it's significant. It's something that, it's not something that they've heard from anybody else. It's something that makes people go, I want that. Yeah. We don't have that now. And no one else has ever offered it. Those are the three. Those are the three. Yeah. Exactly.
I have a slightly different take at it. I think the larger companies can do a better narration of a promise, or maybe they could still portray themselves or do a better storytelling. What I also don't agree is that you have to be very unique. You could do something which is better. So the advantage of a smaller company would always be that we have a blank slate, right? We are not carrying anything legacy. We have an advantage of starting from zero, so we could actually build something which is very modern, very different than what larger companies are doing. We have the agility or the speed to deliver. We don't have red tapes. All those things add. Just to give you an example, I think long back when Google started, right? So there was, email was something that nobody thought, there was Yahoo Mail, Hotmail, there were all the mails, right? In somebody to think of getting into an email kind of a business was, I think people would have laughed at it, who would want to get into an email side of business, right? So the advantage that Google had, because they was very young, so they started a new kind of an email format, which was not their existence. Even people are used to of emails, but then Google kind of did something better as a young company. So even though they were not unique, they did far better than we all know Google where it is.
Good. I agree with everything you just said, but I do want to rebut one thing. And that is, you said the bigger companies can do a better job.
Storytelling, yes.
Yeah, and I don't think they do, Akshay. And an example that maybe you wouldn't relate to if you don't watch the Super Bowl, but anybody here who does, I think would agree that most of the ads in the Super Bowl, they're run by huge companies that are spending millions and millions of dollars just for the one ad, and they're terrible ads. They don't say anything. If you look at them, almost none of them says anything of essence, of substance about their product. They just try to be entertaining. And in my opinion, it's very subjective, but in my opinion, most of them fail miserably at being entertaining. No, there aren't many Super Bowl ads that people are talking about around the water cooler the next day. And these are big companies, so they do everything else well, but that's the reason I got into the business.
But there's not that they can't do. Maybe for some reason they are not able to do, that's a different thing, but they can always do it because they have more resources or more money to, of course, do a better job.
They should do a better job. They have no excuse for not doing a better job.
Yeah, that's great, guys. Well said. I think one of the most underutilized thing that small businesses do is their ability to adapt quickly. Mm-hmm. Adaptability is very, very important in the business climate. I mean, if you're a small flower shop and you can't adapt to the e-commerce or get involved with credit card processing or anything like that right away, then the 1-800-Flowers win. So you got to make sure that you stay afloat and you adapt very, very quickly to the business climate. You have the ability to do that because you're agile. You have a small, staff maybe, and you have the ability to move and make things happen. Where a larger organization have to go through some red tape and resources to make it happen. So adaptability is a very important key, and any small business should take advantage of it.
That's a great point, Omar. One of the things I would add to, and I agree with all of those statements. One of the things I would add to is that small business, we tend to again, have the ability to focus more. And when I say what I mean that is if I look at a big company, they maybe have the resource to work in multiple things. Again, in my industry, we see companies that put batteries in everything from e-bikes up to transit buses or stationary systems. When we started the company, we said, we're going to do one thing. We've got one type of customer we're going to serve, and that was fleet and commercial vehicle manufacturers. We said, we know we don't want to do automotive because we're just a cost center there, and the volumes are going to drive capital that we can't afford. And if you go beyond that, it's too small. But in this market, we know that they don't have the battery experience, they don't have the technical capability, that we have, and they don't have the manufacturing capability to do these things. So we added something, again, a value story, to John's point, that we were able to get in there and be very successful. But we were able to keep focused. And I would say that's been also a challenge, because when you're VC funded, I find, and you guys tell me what you think, but when you're VC funded, you also get pushed in other directions a lot of times. And we saw that a lot, and some of my competitors in the battery space actually had challenges because of that. They ended up trying to do too many things and ultimately driving to failure.
I just want to do a quick spin-off of what John said about Super Bowl. We all watched Bad Bunny show, but he highlighted like a small business in his songs, like a taco stand in LA, and overnight it became a sensation.
Yeah.
And people lined up for it. So sometimes things like that have a lot of power, the exposure that a small business could get through some connection with a big name or big business.
Yeah. Actually, you had a comment?
No, I was just maybe joking that I think funding kills creativity. So
Yeah, exactly.
they'll push you for sales.
So if we look at, large companies tend to win. We talked about with capital, they've got infrastructure. So where should we focus? Where should small businesses choose not to compete? And again, that's kind of the example I just gave with us. We specifically chose some areas we weren't going to work in. How do you manage that in a small business? Akshay, why don't you start?
So I think small businesses for sure cannot compete on anything which is capital intensive. I think that's something they should stay away from. What they could definitely do is, I think in today's world, most of the things you can either partner or probably pull an API and use it. So in fact, that is good because you don't have to spend money. Once you get a customer, you first charge, and then you can just buy that technology in some form, shape or size, and just sell it. So I think focus there is always better that way.
Right.
Go ahead, Omar.
Okay. I think, one of the things that small businesses should avoid doing is go head-to-head with the big guys. Because I'm not sure if you guys have seen the Shark Tank. Mr. Wonderful, he's like, I'm going to crush you like the cockroach that you are. So you don't want to be crushed by the big business. So there's no need to go head-to-head with them. You're very resilient, you're mobile, you're agile. Use your adaptability, use your resourcefulness, and you can go alongside. Like in my industry, in cost-saving industry, there's a few giants, McKinsey, Powerhouse, or some of the other companies. And usually what they do is when companies engage them to come and do some cost reduction for them or cost analysis for them, they send a college kid with behind the ears, and they make more of a mess than actually help them. So use your ability to communicate to them that you are a professional of 20, 30 years in the industry, and you can bring so much more to the business and identify their vulnerabilities so much clearer and provide them such a better solution than anyone else could with much less experience. So use that to your advantage as a small business. That's what I would say.
Awesome.
The thing I would add is that in addition to everything that Akshay and Omar said that I totally agree with, particularly from a capital standpoint, I would be careful to make sure you understand the cost of going to market in whatever industry is. For example, if you're selling a product that's going to sell through a retail store, you probably have to have a distributor who's going to sell the product to the store for you. They're going to charge anywhere from 5% to 20% or so margin or commission on that. The retailer, depending on the retailer, is going to want a margin of, it could be upwards of 55 or 60%. If you can sell at Costco, do that because they make a much lower margin. But if you want to sell through major department stores or even stores like Target or so forth, you got to factor in the margin that they have to make. And at the end of the day, the percentage of that retail price that you get is a pretty small sliver. So study that very carefully.
Yeah, that's why we stay in the B2B space. That's actually the same reason we didn't get into automotive, though, right? We know in the automotive space, and I come out of Detroit, a typical tier 1, tier 2 margin is single-digit percents.
Yep.
And so we knew that wasn't where we wanted to be. We knew that wasn't where the VC market would be. So we actually strategically kind of chose a segment that we focused on.
Exactly.
Awesome. So let me ask this question. What's a strategic decision you think small businesses consistently get wrong? What do we do wrong or maybe do too early when we're starting a young business?
That's a very good question. A lot of small businesses that I've seen, that I've noticed, they overspend their capital on large marketing campaigns and advertising. And they get these large infrastructure protocols, and they invest in Salesforce 200 Enterprise 2.0. And a lot of times they don't really need to do that. They can do away with very, very small, unique software packages that are geared towards small business and will do the job. I mean, when I started this business, that Excel spreadsheet was just as good as, HubSpot for me, until the business, grew to the point where I had the capital to invest in a HubSpot or Salesforce. So, don't sell yourself short. You have the capability. It all boils down to your process, how hard you work, and how clear your mission statement is, and how well your methodology and process is set up. The rest is really minutia, because everything else is going to fall in place once you have a good method and process in place.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think having a process, and again, managing your cash flow early on, right?
Absolutely.
So we see that a lot in my industry. People will overinvest, put in too much capacity too early. We had a lot of government grants in this side of the industry, so people would put in way more than they capacity than they actually had customers aligned for, and so that caused a lot of challenges. Excellent.
I started my career for about the first 25 years in consumer products, and I was Director of Marketing for companies like Gallo and Kellogg's, and VP Marketing for Dial and Cobra Electronics. And in those businesses, they were like what you described, Omar, where those companies had to spend big money in advertising. In the B2B space, which is where I focus most of my consulting, they don't have that luxury. Aren't many companies that have that I've seen when they're starting out that have the luxury of spending a lot of money in their marketing. Yeah. But they do make a mistake, I think, and big companies can make the same mistake. They don't think about their messaging, because even if you don't have a big advertising budget, you've got a website, you've got sales literature that you're putting together, maybe you're doing posts on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, email marketing, and you've got to tell your story there. And I think most founders, because in many cases they developed the product, they created, they conceived of it, it's their baby, and it's a special product, and they know intimately just how special it is, and they tend to assume that it's obvious to everybody else just how special it is, and it's not. So I think a lot of companies fail, even though they've got great technology, great innovation, because they don't make their target audience understand just how special it is. So that's something that don't make the assumption that everybody else is going to automatically get just how special your baby is.
And I'll echo what John said, and that sometimes small businesses have to make some serious decision. Do they want to make payroll for the next couple of months, or do they want to just blow it on a Facebook ad or a Google ad? So you really have to be careful to have the cash flow. That's number one. That's the bloodline for any business. Yeah. Yep. First and foremost, to keep the cash flow going.
Yep.
I'll probably add a few things from my experience, since you said strategically what small companies go wrong in acting big. So the word act itself is a negative term, right? So first of all, you should never act. Always remain true to what you have. So typically when I started my company, I had some finite money, so since it was not venture capitalist and all that, I have bootstrapped. So I had only an X amount of money, and I wanted to make sure that I spend it wisely. So before I made any big plans, made any strategies, nothing I did, I just made sure that I talk and try to get 10 customers. I made sure that I just get the first 10 customers, because those 10 customers will teach you everything about you. Maybe you have something in your head, a notion. It may be right or wrong, but you would not know unless you really get a customer. So I would only say you first go knock the doors, don't spend money anywhere. If you can walk, don't take taxi. Do whatever it takes, just get first 10 customers. I think that should set you good. If you go wrong there, you generally will go wrong.
And that's a great point. Starting out getting those first solid customers is all the difference.
So I didn't even charge any money. So the first 10 customers, I said, you just use my product,
Yeah.
don't pay me anything. I'm fine. So I'm okay with that as well because I think those 10 customers then taught me so much that I could, end up with now 200. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I advise a couple of young startup companies in my industry, and it's one of the things that I've focused into a couple of them is asking the question, who is your customer? Because sometimes they've got a great technology and they get excited about the technology, right? And they say, oh, this is a great widget, it's going to do this. But what they don't ask is, okay, who's going to buy this from me? And so I kind of spent, I know with one company, I spent probably the first 6 weeks asking the same question. Who is your customer? Tell me what this person looks like. What's their job description be? How are they going to use this? But understanding who your customer is, I think helps you drive towards there. You need to know, what is the product you're offering, and then who is it you're going to be selling to. A lot of times, again, especially in the technology side of the world, we see somebody has a great idea and they say, this is awesome, but again, they don't know who the customer is.
Good point.
Awesome. So should we even aspire to become big companies? As we get these small companies here, should we focus on that, do you think? Or should we maintain our niches here?
I think it depends on your business model. Number one, certain businesses are never meant to become conglomerates. And certain businesses just need to focus on staying nimble, focused on their strategy, on growing their company, make sure that it has sustainable growth, cash flows in, they have good people, they have an environment of trust, good culture. You stay focused on these things and you develop these things over time. And if you're in a certain space where you could potentially be bought up by Google or Facebook or somebody else, Meta, somebody's going to end up purchasing you. If you stay focused on staying nimble, resilient, and process-oriented. I see this a lot in my cost reduction industry. A lot of my clients, they focus on the contract. They say, okay, we have a contract with vendor ABC. Let's negotiate a better deal with them. We're paying $10,000 a month. Okay, now they're offering us $9,000 a month. Okay, deal. Let's sign another 5-year contract with them. But what they don't realize is that if they go through a certain process, which is first, you have to determine where you are in order to identify where you want to go. So you have to do a discovery of what your current needs and requirements are in the first place, because the contract that you currently have in place may be completely based on wrong requirements that may have been relevant 5-6 years ago, but aren't relevant now.
Yeah, they change.
Unless you do that, you're not going to get to the bottom of it, because maybe you could do the contract at $5,000 a month, not at $9,000 a month. But you have to have a good process of discovery, creating the current scope of work, and then based on that, you negotiate the contract with the vendor.
Perfect. Great answer. Akshay, you talked yesterday a little bit about getting ready to grow your company, expanding out of India and moving into some other regions. What's your philosophy around that? When you think about that, how are you going to manage that growth?
I think managing anything doesn't really matter by region. I think when you're managing these days, you're not physically going and managing anything, right? So you pretty much have to have good systems and good tools. For me, I think I paid a lot of attention because I sell efficiency, right? So for me, it was very, very critical for me to stay true to the efficient business format. So I've always made sure that whatever I'm doing, with how least overheads can I do something. I think since I've been focused from day one, for me, I think I had one support person when I had one customer. Now I have about 200, I still have one support person. So I also believe that when you make good systems, they should just work more reliably. So if you focus on reliability, that any which ways takes care of all your overhead, because you know to engage with customer, you don't have to send someone, you don't have to manage things. Excellent. So you pay a lot of attention in making reliable system. I think reliability is extremely important. It gives you a great advantage in terms of your scalability and your cost benefits.
Excellent. Perfect.
Also, I think from an AI perspective, maybe I can add a few things.
Yeah.
So I think AI has been, extremely valuable, at least to a smaller company like me, because earlier what I could not get access to, or I had no, the resources or the money to get access, now I can, because I can go and talk to a GPT, or I can go and talk to some agent which can give me a knowledge or experience worth 20, 30 years I would have to hire that person to get it. So that's a great advantage for smaller companies, because then we don't have to spend as much and we can get. And this is not so good for a bigger company because they already have so many people for 20 years experience. So they probably have to fire them. But we don't have to hire anyone, but we can, enable maybe the people with 2 years experience to work as a 20 years experienced people. So that's a great advantage as well.
Awesome. So John, you've been with big companies, you've been with small companies. So how do you maintain the traits, right? So when you think about, again, being a startup entrepreneur, how do you keep your vision? We talked about vision in one of the earlier panels today, right? How do you maintain that vision as your company grows? And that's a great question for all of us here.
Yeah, I think it starts with having for lack of a better word, an ethos that you build your company around, your standards, your values, your kind of core beliefs. And hopefully you've got a small team that you're all holding hands and you're just embracing that same vision of what you want to stand for. But there's another thing you could do beyond that, and it's going to seem trivial, but it's something I put a lot of stock in. I'm a big believer in taglines, in the models, the company model. Now, most of them are throwaway. They're interchangeable. Everybody sounds kind of the same. Take this tagline away from this car company, you can put it on this breakfast cereal and it'll work just about as well. But if you have a 3 to 7 word tagline that really captures the essence of what you believe, what you're about, I think that can be your guidepost so that whenever you're faced with a decision, you look at the logo on the wall and say, okay, would that be consistent with that? A great example, I think, one of my favorite taglines, and it's been around for decades, is BMW's, the ultimate driving machine. And my favorite story is that decades ago, when white wall tires were the rage, they refused to put white wall tires on their cars. And the reason is that did nothing to enhance the drivability of a BMW. It didn't make it a better driving machine, a more ultimate driving machine. And that decision, I'm not sure they were looking at the tagline when they made that decision, but it just shows that essence, they're just about being the ultimate driving machine and don't let anything else get in the way. Yeah. And I think that served them well for decades, and they still use that tagline.
That's awesome. Actually, so again, how do you keep the traits, your focus on process and systems? How are you going to keep that as you grow the company? Keep that vision in place?
I think it's simple it's a top-down approach. So I think if I am heading the company, it's my duty to make sure that we don't dilute any value system. I think that'll come probably many a times you feel, if I do this or do that, maybe I'll get a quick gain or I can maybe get a customer or two. But I think in the long run, it's a bad thing. But I think as a leader of the company, if I can make sure that I'm not trying to push a revenue at time of compromising the value of a company, it's easy. Because you break it once, then you break it many times, then you just continue to break it. I think there's no end to it. I think that's the responsibility of the guy who's heading the company. I think there's no rocket science to it. I think it just somewhere you have to balance your greed to your values to your business, I think.
Akshay, do you have people who work for you who sometimes will come to you with an idea that they're excited about, but you feel strays too far from what you want the focus to be?
No, I think no. So sometimes yes. So for example, if it's a very random thing, so if I'm in a business of selling shoes and somebody says, come, let's do something very different, like maybe sell an ice cream. So maybe I will have a question why. So if there is a synergy that can be drawn with what you do, because that's what add value. Because if you have two absolutely separate things, of course you're going to bleed or your resources will get wasted. But you can synergize your business lines, good, because you can use the same set of resources. Now you have two product lines. So there use synergy if you can be drawn. An idea can come from anyone, for sure.
Yeah. That's a great point. And building on that, when we started ABS, there was actually a point about 2 years into it where we were getting a lot of inquiries for what they call grid energy systems. So think of large containerized batteries. So we're out of Detroit. We're all automotive guys. So we do cars. We do things that roll. And so it's a different solution. So what we did is we kept getting pushed for it. We actually brought in and started a whole other division so that we could keep our focus on the mobility aspect, because it's a little different technology, it's a different sales cycle, it's a different customer. And we were pretty successful. Started up a whole other division, focused on this, created some great product, and then we ultimately spun those off into their own company. So it allowed us to kind of keep that focus.
Yeah, I mean, John brought up a good point about ethos. In any leadership culture and how you want to build your company, ethos plays a major role.
Yeah.
So if I may get philosophical a little bit, I think it was Buddha that said, peace comes from within. Don't seek it from without, right? So first you have to get your house in order before you focus on everybody else and put your processes and methodologies in place, i.e. cash flow, backup, plans, stuff like that. And then the Romans turned that around by saying that a civilization isn't going to ruin itself from without, but from within, right? So you can put everything on its ear and analyze it. It really comes down to the methodology and the process and your resiliency and being nimble and agile in a moving, fast-growing market to stay afloat.
I think it's to the same point. I would say I think your core team has to carry that values because people will come and go your organization. I think core team remains. So if your core team can sustain the culture and the ethos well, I think you should be fine.
Yeah, you guys just sparked a thought in me. So our company, we were acquired in 2023 by Komatsu. 65,000 employee company acquired us, a little 300 person company. So we're actually in the midst of this right now, right? So we're absorbed into them. We're fully owned subsidiary now, but we're now starting to take a look, and this is actually something we're actually doing in the next couple of weeks, is sitting down and looking at our core values, looking at our mission, our vision, and our values, and saying, are these still aligned with where we want to be, and are they aligned with where our new parent wants to be? So kind of trying to make that decision is do we need to change those? Do they evolve as we evolve here? So it's an interesting point.
And they didn't try to force theirs on you?
No. So that was one of the things in our when we went through the process that we liked. We felt we were culturally similar, right? They didn't want to come in and replace all the management and drive it. They knew that we were the experts in this technology, and they weren't. And so they've come in and they've helped where we needed help. They've got 105 years of manufacturing experience. So coming in and helping us figure out how to do things better at the manufacturing floor, helping us figure out our quality systems. So they helped us with the things that they were good at. And then we've helped them as we start to develop products specifically to electrify some of their applications. So now we're at the point where we're saying, do we need to do we need to just take I don't think we'll see a big change, but I think we'll see a slight curve as we start to move more towards their values.
Interesting.
Awesome. All right, let's see, what's next? Here's a good question. So where does culture break first as companies grow, and how do you prevent that? Go ahead, Omar, you want to start?
Culture?
Culture, yeah.
I think culture is number one. It's the foundation. And that's what everything is built on. Mm-hmm. So it's to the person that founded the company, the founder, is to make sure that you put the foundation right. Because business is in many ways like a mountain, right? You're climbing a mountain. First, you get to the base. You got to make sure that before you climb, you got to make sure you got the right gear, because it could get cold up there, So you got to make sure you pack some warm clothes and some gear and some hiking stuff. And get ready. So the first order of business is to get organized, to have your gear in order. And then as you climb through the slopes and the valleys of the mountain, that's when you do your discovery, you're building your culture, you're adding employees, you're building trust, you're creating mission statement, you're creating processes and methodologies, you're putting all these foundations in place to build the culture of the company on. And then you get to the summit, which is the peak. You peak up at a certain point because you go, wow, this is amazing. I've never expected this kind of revenue come through the door. That is when the maintenance kicks in. That is when you really need to be careful to stay resilient and don't get lost in the mayhem and lose a lot of money on advertising and nonsense and campaigns, and keep the cash flow going and build upon it and keep the movement going.
And there's probably, and I think actually you talked a little bit about, again, as the company grows and managing the vision, you're the leader and need to drive that vision. And so building on what Omar just said, I was thinking about, again, our company has grown to 300 people, so that vision, you've got to continually reinforce that drive to your senior leaders, and then they've got to have the same vision, they've got to pass that down, so it's got to roll down the hill.
So I think probably for me, vision and culture are slightly two different things. I try to keep a culture very small. I think if you have maybe 200 points or 100 points doesn't go well. So for my company, there was a simple culture that we have kept it in place. One is treat others how you want to be treated. So most decisions that we take, we put ourselves in the customer's shoes and decide. Does it make sense? Second, we kept is be honest, don't lie. So I think as a company culture, we have only broadly have those two statements. We just follow those. Everything is revolving around it. Now, as we go along, we may change some lines, we may change some processes. Right. But these two lines, I think, is easy to follow. Yeah. If you make it too complex, if you make too many of such points, I think it'll go nowhere because people tend to.
And how do you reinforce that as you grow to make sure that when new employees come on or as you grow into new regions?
So let's say there are only 2 points. So I think it's easy to first tell them these 2 points. I think it's straightforward. And then I think second, any policies that we make in a company, we do through voting. So me as a leader, I do not decide the policy. So we put a policy out, okay, fine, that we need to do X, Y, Z. So everybody votes. So we take ideas, whichever idea is the best idea, that formulates as a policy. But those two remains the standard ethos, that we are not lying and treat others how you want to be treated.
But to build on what Akshay is saying, culture could have many other facets as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, your interaction with employees, the trust within the organization,
so the first point takes care of it. Treat others how you want
the
to be
treated. The hierarchy within the organization, and obviously treatment of your customers could be multifaceted points that you could inject within the culture of your organization. So, yeah, very, very important.
I think one way a company can go wrong culture-wise is when they've grown to the point where they bring in a new person at a high level, somebody from outside the company who doesn't share the culture and they
didn't emerge out of it.
Right, exactly, and the people hiring him or her didn't do their due diligence well enough to see if they were going to be a good mesh with that. I think the best example, and it's pretty dramatic, it was, 40 years ago when Apple basically fired Steve Jobs and brought in John Scully, who had been the president of Pepsi. And he totally changed the culture there, and it almost killed the company. And, famously, a couple years later, Jobs came back and turned it back around, and they grew on to dramatically greater heights than they were during his first tenure. But they really took a big step back for several years because that was such a jarring change to the culture, and it disrupted everything that the company did.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to add, I'm sorry, actually. I wanted to add that once you scale your summit, as I mentioned before, and you're on top of the mountain, you build so much potential energy. And now you got to maintain this potential energy. So a lot of work goes into maintaining that potential energy to keep things going. Sometimes it's not very hard to get to the top. It's much harder to stay at the top. Yeah. Exactly.
I think what John said about when you hire a new person who comes in the organization. So we have had instances like that. So let's say somebody who's coming. Now it happens, let's say if I am coming on a senior position, I may pass a PPT work or a presentation work to my junior, right? I say, do this. So then in our company, we are supposed to speak honestly, right? So the junior will say, no, I'm not doing this, is your job. So when some argument happens, then we go back to the ethos. So that first clause says, treat others how you want to be treated. So I'll ask the senior guy, if somebody passes you this, would you want to do it? Or are you being honest? So I think the matter is mostly settled with those two things.
Yeah, interesting.
That's great. Most of the time.
Awesome. So in today's environment, is it better for small businesses to compete against the large companies or to align with them? And John, I'm going to start with you because you've been with both big and small. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can really point to anything in my experience where I had to deal with that. I would actually, I'll defer, let Akshay and Omar talk to that because they have more relevant experience in that area.
I would say I think it's a call the business has to take. I think sometimes it makes sense to align, sometimes it makes sense to compete, I think, because when you're competing with larger companies, you may get some portion of the pie. Mm-hmm. For a larger company, maybe 10 million makes no difference, but for you, a 10 million deal can make a big difference. So I think it's you align or you compete, that's up to you, but probably just pick a fight that you can win.
Well said, Akshay.
Pick a fight you can win, I like that.
Yeah. I have to go with what I'd said initially, which is it depends on the business, actually, really. Because, I've seen this happen with many small businesses. They get an offer of acquisition or a merger, and they decide to merge with a larger company. And then the larger company comes in and guts the whole employee division, lays them off and gets rid of the executives, and they bring their own executives. Mm-hmm. And like John alluded to, their culture is so vastly different than what the culture of this company was, that it completely decimates the whole foundation of what this company was built on in the first place. And as a result, we lose a lot of customers. So it is very, very important if you want to go through a merger and acquisition to make sure that the culture, the mission statement, the vision, all of those things are aligned. Otherwise, there will be a lot of breakage in between and a lot of growing pains.
And so building on that, what makes a small company attractive to partner with or for an acquisition target for a bigger company? What do you think makes a company interesting when you're engaged with those larger companies? What makes them want to partner with you?
Product and services, I think, is the number one. And then methodology and mission statement would follow suit. But product and services, what's the shiny thing in front of the investors? They see, wow, this company did this and that, and they acquired this customer, and they acquired that customer. That's what attracts their attention. And then they dig into their mission and vision and the processes that the company has and see if it's aligned with their merger and acquisition process.
Your question was about merger and acquisitions, right?
Well, yeah, again, what makes a small company an attractive partner, whether it's to partner with an acquisition and merger or even just to work with in general, right?
I would be a wrong person to answer this because I hate selling the company. So for me, it's an answer that I can't.
Let's take it from this. Actually, you've got some very big companies you're working with. What made your company attractive to them? Why did they go to your company if you've got a top tier?
So I was basically, what I would say, right? What I was doing was unique to my interest. So I think what makes my company or my company unique is because what I do is kind of very unique. So one thing is that we focus on efficiency. So most companies are selling a product or you're trying to sell something. I'm trying to keep it very basic because anybody who's buying something, they're buying to be more efficient, right? So end of the day, whatever you are doing is to either solve a problem or to probably do the same thing better, right? And that is the end objective. So I've just gone right to the end point and I'm just selling us an efficiency thing.
Okay.
And it's kind of unique because what makes it is very, very complex to deliver something like this. So in my line of work, there is no competing company. So for me, it's generally very easy. So if I'm going into any kind of a discussion, 99% I would get the deal.
Yeah, well, if there's no competition, that makes it a little easier. You got a unique niche, right?
But that is also because I was interested in this line. So it is not a scalable line. So it's not that you could make this and replicate and quickly sell it. It's because it has to be tailored for each customer's need, right? So that makes it a little exciting. I like that because it's not monotonous.
Yeah.
Right? It's you're engaging, you're discussing, you're solving a problem, and then I bring the tech. So tech is just like in English, right? So you're using that language to write a song or a poem or anything like that. So tech is not important. It's how you execute that is what is important.
Excellent.
So most big companies actually don't pay so much attention to the customers. They're just trying to sell. They're not trying to listen to the customer or trying to solve a problem.
Yeah,
that makes it easy for me actually.
That's an important part, listening to the customer.
So most customers are trying to sell. So like most companies are selling. I'm trying to solve. So I'm coming with genuine, there's a genuineness in our approach. So I think that makes us very different. And then we generally, I think, sell because of that.
And I have a clear example of that. Very well said, Akshay. We've all seen small hole-in-the-wall mom-and-pop restaurants that they have excellent food, great service. We just love it, great pricing. And they do so well, they attract somebody's attention and they get bought by a chain or something. Out goes the customer service, out goes the quality of the food.
Yep.
So that is very, very important to maintain that or at least sell to a business that's going to honor those parameters that you worked so hard all your life to build.
So I'll give you one example. It has happened once, I think, maybe once or twice in the company. So one of my sales guys, he said and told a customer some lie. He said, no, we can do this, you can replace your system with our system. Then I went and spoke to the customer, he explained me. So then I saw their system, I said, no, I think my salesperson lied to you. Your existing system is better than ours, you please keep it. We'll come back to you when ours is better than yours. So then we went back, but I did charge my time and my cab from the sales guy's salary.
That is
then
a great story.
I added a clause in the statement that if you lie and then something happens, I will deduct 25% of the salary. So fix that problem.
Has that company come back to you? I mean, if I were that company,
so they called me after 2 years.
I would say, I'm going to.
So they called me after 2 years, or not? They called me. I went to them after 2 years. They said, now my system is better than what you had that time. So if you would like to see my system, so he said, no, please show me. So I actually got the client after 2 years. Yeah.
Great. Happy ending.
All right, so we're about 5 minutes left. 5 minutes, perfect. So why don't we get into one last kind of closing question, and then if there's any questions from anybody in the audience, we're happy to take some of those. So let me start with this. If you're starting a small business today, What would be the first strategic move you make in the first 90 days?
Who's going?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I think I'll probably do the same thing which I did then. I think, I'm not sure about 90 days, but I think when you're starting, just try to stick to what you're good at. I would say don't start a company with a money objective, because I think you will lose that battle. But if you do something that you like doing, I think you probably will have infinite energy to do it. It's always very simple. So business, I feel, is not complex. Business is easy. It's just hard to do it. Because it'll hold you, right? You have to work 12 hours, 14 hours relentlessly, right? It's just the journey is hard. It is not complex. It's not rocket science. It is not complex at all. You stay true to your cause. If you're interested, you like something, I think you'll succeed. If you don't like it, the other person will beat you, because everybody has more money than you. So you can't win that battle. But if you have more interest, I think that battle you can always win, because very few people have business with interest.
So it's getting that kind of strategic vision and direction.
Vision, I think, doesn't
goal.
matter. I think you follow your interest. I think if you follow the interest, everything follows.
Passion, maybe that's the right word.
Passion would be a
Finding
little
your
bit
passion.
stronger word, but I think interest is good enough to start. Passion, though, is self-consuming as well, but interest is good to start from.
I like that a lot. What I would add to that is, once you started from your passion, I would have said until several years ago, I would also want to make sure that whatever you're going to do, you're pretty confident that you can do it better than anybody else is doing it right now. And because to be able to have people think of you as the best at what you do, it's a good thing. But about 10 years ago, I read a line that I thought was really profound. It says, the goal of positioning a company or marketing a company, it's not to make people think that you're the best at what you do. It's to make them think that you're the only one who does what you do. It's a difference, right? And it's pretty cool. And the person who said that was Jerry Garcia, the Grateful Dead. And it makes sense, because if you know any Dead fans, they're pretty confident that the Grateful Dead is the only band that has ever existed in the history of the planet. So it's hard to do that, to get people to think of it that way. Apple, I think, comes as close as anybody. Apple users, they're not using a smartphone, they're using an iPhone.
Yeah.
And they think of Apple as the only company in that business, or the only company in the laptop business, or whatever. So it's hard to achieve that, but I think it's a good thing to aspire to, whatever you're doing. Make people think you're the only one who does it.
Very well said, John. I think the genesis of any good company initially starts with a product or an idea. You have to have a good product or a good idea, good service. Yeah. And then you build on it with a good vision and mission statement with clarity. And then people are the most integral part of any organization, that they'll go to bat for you and they'll grow the business to unbelievable heights if the culture is right and the trust is there and they have clarity of vision and the mission statement is clear to everybody within the organization.
Awesome. Can we answer any questions? Here's one right here.
Some years ago, I read the book by Jack Welch called Winning. Jack Welch is the former CEO of, what was it? General Electric?
Electric.
Yeah. And he addressed a number of interesting topics. One of the topics was what creates a good culture in a company. And his answer was actually quite concise and actionable. He said, the culture of a company sprinkles down from the top, goes from the top down. He didn't use the word sprinkles. Goes from the top down. And basically the way for the CEO to instill or install a good culture is to say what you mean and do what you say.
Yep.
So my question is, do you agree with that statement from Jack Welch or disagree? And is he missing something important?
So for me, I think it ties back to the second point, don't lie. So I think, just be honest. I think it's the same thing what you're saying. Just do what you mean and say what you do, right? So it's the same thing.
No, say what you mean and do what you say.
Correct. So just be honest to your commitments. I think what you say, you should always do it.
To answer your question, I completely agree with that statement. A leader, like you mentioned, he has to install confidence and trust and have it sprinkled down. So you have to always mean what you say and do what you mean. Because it is very, very important for people to see the leadership and follow that business model within the organization. All the departments will follow that. All that is going to translate to the sales force. That's going to translate to their customer service, tech support, all those areas of your business. So I completely agree with that statement.
There's something important missing from it.
Please feel free to enlighten us.
No. I said, from my standpoint, I agree with, I think that there's aspects of it, again, you could delve into deeper, right? So when I think of culture, I think of integrity and trust, right? So again, and it follows some of the things my panelists, partners here have said, that I think if you take those and if you live those, again, if you're living those traits, and you've got to be consistent, you've got to always do those, that's when it transfers down. When you're not consistently, again, acting walking the walk and talking the talk, when you're not consistent, the employees will see that, and they will replicate whatever you're doing. So that culture will evolve, I think, based on how the leader demonstrates it and how they act it.
I was a big fan of Jack Welch. He was generally considered the most successful CEO in the world for many, many years. But the one thing that I wonder about is the company did not do well after he left. And the guys that he groomed to take over for him didn't perform as well as he did. And I don't know if there was something about the culture when he was running things that kept those leaders from maybe developing into the CEOs that he was. So I'm not making a statement. I'm just wondering if there might have been something missing in his view of culture that prevented his successors from having the success that he did. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No.
Oh, okay.
I thought you were going to tell us what's missing.
Sorry?
I thought you were going to tell us what's missing.
No, I'm asking you. Yeah. I don't know if there's a second question, but there was a second thing that has always been on my mind that Jack Welch said about the right way to go about hiring, what questions to ask. And I loved his answer. And what he said was, okay, sit down with the person you're interviewing and explain to him that there's no rush, and ask that person, okay, for every place that you've been to since, since you were in high school, or depends on the age of the guy or the gal, for every place you've ever been, tell me why you went there, who you reported to, what you accomplished, and why you left. And I have plenty of time, so just listen to it. And once a person truly goes through that biography, boy, you know everything about what motivates the person, what the person accomplishes, what he's looking for, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought that was also great.
That's great.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Unless it's an AI interview these days. AI is interviewing people. But, well said. Thank you.
Young lady in the back had one more question.
Trying to figure out how to transition away from being the day-to-day operations owner. So what advice would you give me? I've been taking notes frantically, but I'm a very small company. I run a dance school, and I'm on year 49. So I guess there's some element of success because I'm still here, but needing to transition. What advice would you have? Keeping the culture is the biggest thing I'm worried about because it's been me. And and people always tell me, you're the reason I'm here, blah, blah. I think it feels great, but I need it to transfer.
Your question was that you are a smaller company and then you are struggling with day-to-day operations, is what your question was?
How to transfer
your day-to-day
operations.
my
Turn over
culture,
somebody
the
else.
culture that I've created to other people.
So I would say two parts to this. One is try not have people dependency. You pay attention to tools. So you make sure that your teams are using tools. So there is some process or some method to the madness. That is one. Second, I think you have to delegate and let people learn, and not everybody can fly. So make sure that you're not expecting a horse to fly. You choose the right person for the right job. I think those two parts from my perspective, I think works.
I would add to that, that delegation, you just delegate more and more to that person and see if they can hold up their own as you keep doing that. And then I'm sure if that person has been with you for a long time and there's an element of trust and they know your processes, methodology, that would be a plus, so that they can carry on the mission and the culture that you've created so wonderfully over the past 40 years, you said?
49.
49
Yeah.
years.
Next year's our 50
So
anniversary.
you got to make sure that baby that you've baby to adulthood is now being taken care of by someone that knows how to take care of that business and little different
Yeah.
components of it.
And I'm not sure this is a good idea or not, but I'll just throw out there. Is it the type of situation where you've got some long-time clients that you could talk to and just kind of say, hey, I'm thinking about moving out at some point, and maybe get their thoughts on if anybody that's currently working for you that they would love to see take over if you have to replace yourself?
No, that's a great idea. And even a focus group of that spurred me, a focus group of parents, what is important to you as to why you're here, and how can I then make sure that is in the person that I choose, whether it's a person that's there now or whether that means that I have to hire from outside and gradually bring it in.
And I want to bring up a really important point on behalf of the panel, definitely for myself, right? The more I've had my business, I've been in the world of business for 35 years, and like I'd mentioned to you over lunch, I think we met.
Yeah.
The more I've gone, the more I've realized that I don't know much. There's so much more to learn. So we're here as a panel of an authority on business. Sometimes we're just as lost as you are. So I just want you to know that.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
So you'll have to take the decision. I think it would be right or wrong, but the time would tell.
Time will tell. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, please join me in thanking my fellow panelists here. I think it's been a great panel, and hopefully we've answered some questions. Thank you guys for sticking around till the end.
Thanks.
Oh, stand up. Okay.